who made it.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Nature's Calls podcast. We are diving in today on the offensive position groups at the Combine. A lot to go over, super exciting. Couldn't be more excited to have a guest with me today. This is Stephen Glover joining us today, diehard Chargers fan just like all of us, and excited to get into it. I'm your host, Nature Erdman, and these are Nature's Calls. So let's kick off with offensive linemen.
I'd love to kick off with offensive linemen. First, I do want to say happy birthday to our boy Justin Herbert. Good
Happy
old
birthday.
310, let's go. Happy birthday, my guy. But yeah, offensive linemen, we've been linked to Joe Alt.
It's a huge talking point. It's a huge argument point amongst Chargers fans for the most part. Joe Alt looked good. I mean, again, I don't think he looked generational by any means. His size and his athleticism at that size is obviously a huge shining star for him. Like it stands out. Like the guy moving at the size that he did is impressive. But in some of those agility drills, slipping, sliding, didn't look like the master technician that I've heard about. But I mean, again, taking somebody who's only played one side of the offensive line and moving them to the other is always a concern. So, I mean, it's...
Especially somebody who transitioned from tight end to tackle. And then, so now you're moving positions throughout college, but now you're moving them in the pros to do the same thing. If he's not generational, he's not looking generational to us. I think 5 is just
It's too rich, man. It's just way too rich to gamble it on. At 5, I'm looking for the most sure thing or, like, Hall of Fame potential. And when I say sure thing, I'm looking at, like, Malik Neighbors and how he separates, Brock Bowers, and he's going to succeed at the next level, or Hall of Fame potential is Marvin Harrison Jr., obviously, if he falls to us. Something like that. But a right tackle, something that I know everybody talks about it being a premium position, I mathed it out. It's about my 14th most valuable position on the roster. That's a lot to gamble on at 5. So, again, trade back. I'm okay with Joe Alt. If he falls down to us magically, cool. Yeah, I like him as a prospect and I like him as a player. I don't like him as a number 5 pick. But
when we're talking about offensive linemen at that position, we do have the pick of the litter, the cream of the crop. We get to choose whatever that looks like. So when we're looking at 5, when we're looking at offensive linemen, we get to decide what looks like the best fit for us. And I know we've been linked to J.C. Latham also because he's just been a mauler at Alabama. Mm-hmm. Nick Saban knows how to coach up an offensive lineman. Other than Evan Neal, as of late, all the offensive linemen from Alabama have looked good, if not great. So when we're looking at that number 5 pick, if we do need to go to that mauler, or we need someone to go out there and be generational for our offense, then I can see where J.C. Latham does make a little bit of sense for us.
But at that point, the value level is just not there. And so it's like, again, we trade back, especially if we're trading back into the teens, 20s. I love a J.C. Latham there. I love a Taliese Fuaga there. But you have to mitigate that risk. Because, I mean, if we blow a number 5 pick, it's just... That's a lot to recover from.
It's gonna hurt.
Like, when is the last time we were drafting this high, the Joey Bosa pick, and when are we going to be drafting this high again with Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert? I hope never again in this tenure.
Keep us in the 20s, please. I'll take 32 all day. So
yeah, and of course, obviously, this class is ridiculously deep talent-wise. So maybe someone falls to the second, but if not, like... This is where interior offensive linemen, like top-tier interior offensive linemen, or that second or third right tackle off the board go in drafts, is that 20s range. So, like, hey, if we're picking 18 to 26 next year, and we're stuck with Pipkins this year anyway, why are we making this such a pressured need when we can go ahead and grab someone next year anyway? So that's kind of how I feel on the position.
Well, at least our draft position, but yeah.
At least our draft position. But don't get me wrong. Some of those guys out there, like, were impressive. Amarius Mims, moving at that size, his shuttle times, like, you're a freak athlete. But someone else is going to be like, okay, I don't care about your 11 career starts. We're going to take you at pick 14 anyway. Like, I don't know, man. He's going to go early. And again, yeah, that's offensive linemen. seeing their short bursts, seeing their agility and their shuttle chimes and stuff like that is great. Tape is so much more important to me. And I'm not going to say that I'm a blocking aficionado. Like, I can evaluate a lot of positions. I'm not going to say that offensive line's one of them that I can do at a high level. But it's just, the Underwear Olympics are not the place to make or break your position as an offensive tackle.
No, if anything, it tells me that they're willing to work and they want to compete. And you can see, and I think it's more measurables. Like, I want to see how big are their hands, how big is their arms, like, can they jump, what are they in bench? Like, if I got a right tackle who's supposed to be generational, like Joe Alt getting out benched by Blake Corum,
and we know the short arm argument and everything else, but
I mean,
it was the quantity of reps wasn't there, Joe Alt.
It wasn't. Like I said, don't get me wrong, bro. You're 6'7". I never want to see you. Like, I'm not fighting. I'm not trying to. I'm not that guy.
If you're watching this, Joe Alt, we love you.
I think you're great. You're gonna be a great NFL player. I don't think you're our guy at 5, but I do love the hype, and what I would love to see is that we're throwing all these names out there because we're saying we like these guys, but we're doing it because if all the guys that we think go first, which is what they're saying, Mel Kiper Jr., like Field Yates, I mean, I haven't seen Todd McShay this year, but are talking about...
is wild. He only has his first one out, and it's wild.
But, I mean, you're looking at you got 3 quarterbacks going first, and then MHJ, where does he go? And then the cream of the crop for offensive linemen, whoever has those overwhelming needs, then we're hyping up J.C. Latham now looks good. Joe Alt looks great. Rosengarten ran a 4.98. Like, let's see everybody that's out here running and throw all their names out there. Yeah, I know we love JPJ, and we need a center. But I think what we're doing for our dynamic, I think we're throwing all the noise out there and seeing what we're getting for trade offers, because someone's going to need that right tackle, someone's going to need that left tackle, someone is looking at Joe Alt tape right now and is just really excited. So, I think in terms of what the production we got at the Combine for measurables, I think it was really good to see. I do think there's a lot to look at, and being at pick 5, we do have a lot of good things to look at. And it's not just offensive linemen. We do get to look at tight end. If MHJ does drop down there, then we're good. But, I mean, we get a little bit more of like a kind of play with. But back to the offensive linemen, the way that they did shine and didn't shine, like you said, Rosengarten was moving.
Yep. Looked like an athlete out there, and I didn't see that on tape. And one thing about Rosengarten, like, I want everybody to mention, like, first of all, he's a true right tackle. He's been playing right tackle. But he is their most valuable tackle because Penix is a lefty. That is his blind side. Yep. So it's something important to remember. Like, that is why Roger Rosengarten, and seeing that tape and how important he was out there, matters, because that is the spot that you need your premium tackle at in Washington's offense, as long as Penix is the quarterback. So something to consider there. Roger Rosengarten, if he starts flying up draft boards, I'm going to be super bummed, because he is one of those mid-round guys that I'm in love with. But yeah, across the board, I think you have, talent-wise, for what's normally taken in the first round, you've got 9 offensive linemen that typically could be in that first-round conversation. They're not all going to go. So, like, we have an opportunity to grab good quality talent in the second if it's that important to us. I just don't think the talent disparity between what we can get at pick 5 and pick 37 is worth a top 5 pick.
I would absolutely agree with that. Yeah. Unless we were able to trade down. But like I said, I love the hype that's going up there. You got people, like I said, you might see someone that loves Mims that much because of the way that he measured out.
Freakish ability.
And like I said, and that's what like I said, as we're looking at these linemen, like I said, the Underwear Olympics is not the way. But if it got all these people jumped in the top 50, like I said, there's a top 50 that can all go in the first round, but only 32 can get drafted.
Yep.
So let them all keep moving up, and the people that are falling through the cracks, like we will talk about later, like maybe some receivers or running backs that fall. Running backs are going to fall anyway. I think we've gotten out of there. There's no Bijan in this class, which we'll talk running backs later. But when you're talking offensive linemen, if there's 9 that go in the first round, there's more than 9 offensive linemen that are going to get drafted, and there's more than 9 that are going to be on our board. So let them go up. If we like Rosengarten that much, and he is a true right tackle, and we don't like Pimpkins that much, then that even helps us even more if we do like that pick 5, because, which we'll talk tight ends later, that'll be a small conversation. Yep. There's only 1 tight end in that class.
Exactly.
So Brock Bowers at 5 is what I'm hinting at. But there's still a lot of good things. I mean, JPJ, he didn't run at the Underwear Olympics, but he was at the Senior Bowl, and we loved the way that he had production. He was with Bo Nix for the last 2 years that Bo Nix was there as well.
And everything I heard as far as his conversations with interviews and everything else went was just wildly impressive. Everything about that you hear is just like he's a gamer, and he's aggressive, and he wants to impose his will, which is what I want out of a center. I want someone who has that just alpha dog mentality at that position.
Oof.
Yep. But as far as offensive tackles go, we're not going to go too much more into them. There's a lot of guys, if we trade back into the high teens, 20s, that I'm okay with taking. I just don't see that being the case. So we're just going to touch on the top guys and then move on. I do want to touch on centers. Obviously, we already talked about JPJ. Zach Frazier, man.
I remember sending you that text where it was like, Zach Frazier?
Dog. He's that guy. If he's there at 30, and I think there's a very real chance that he's right there in the middle of the first round. I think with you got Pittsburgh and Miami and everybody right up there back to back, desperately in need of centers. They could both go. Barton's absolutely in that conversation for me. I love his flexibility. He's a starting guard in the NFL. He's a starting center in the NFL. So if we go get that vet guy at center and then Barton falls to us at 37, I'm jumping all over it. Because, I mean, that no matter what, you have a starting position for him in the NFL, either one of our spots. But those are really my three guys. I've been a huge Sed Van Pran guy for months now. That was mostly when he was talking about falling to the fourth round. Now I think he's probably taken in the second round. If he falls to the third, I'm all for it. Arm length for me is a concern with him. After the Zion Johnson pick, I'm a little scarred as far as the arm length issue. But outside of that, like you gotta get a starting caliber center in free agency. You have to. We can't pigeonhole ourselves like that.
Absolutely agree with you. I mean, Corey Linsley leaving. I mean, granted, nothing but the best for you moving forward. I hope everything's healthy with you. There are some. I think center is more of a. I think we need a veteran there. I mean, it's just like a middle linebacker, which we'll talk. You already talked defense.
Yeah, we already talked defense.
We're hurting at middle linebacker, but I think that we need that voice on our offensive line, and I think a veteran would fit us more than having, like, as much as I love JPJ. I mean, we love the other Zach Frazier. We can go on and on about centers. We do love Greg Barton.
Yep.
But I don't think those guys will come in and be the voice that we need to be on that offensive line.
Yep.
I want Herbert to worry about Herbert.
Yep.
I don't want Herbert to worry about the offensive line now. I think that the center from Carolina just got cut. That was with Greg Roman in 2021.
Yep.
That was a top 5 corner. His name is escaping me.
Third center.
Yeah. Would be a great hole to fill. And like I said, I do love the guys that they do have to offer at center.
And why I want a veteran anyway at center is like to be able to just really communicate that coaching style to the rest of the offensive line. When you have a whole new team coming in, and we all know run blocking scheme, pass blocking schemes are going to be wildly different in this offense.
Absolutely.
So being able to have a vet leader who can communicate those changes and has familiarity with Greg Roman, Jim Harbaugh, whoever it is, has that familiarity, I think that translates huge to being able to expedite this process.
Oh, absolutely.
Because there's going to be so much learning curve. So any of it that we can cut out with a little bit of familiarity is extremely helpful. So, still like Andre James, but I think his price tag is higher than some of those guys out there.
Yeah.
So finding someone who can get a little bit of a discount is awesome, especially duration of the contract. If we do go out and draft a center that is a little bit more of a developmental center, having somebody who can just bridge for a year or two instead of like signing a 3-year, $9 million a year contract, like having somebody who we can sign a shorter term to would be really, really nice. Instead of having to really finagle guaranteed money in the third year or anything like that. Like if we go out there and, like I said, get that center out of Carolina, he's only going to get a 2-year deal. We can probably get him for $6 to $7 million a year. I think that's a perfect bridge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the bridge is important for us moving forward with that veteran presence. I do think we have those holes that need to be filled, and I think that puts the staple of what we want to do moving forward for the whole offensive line and what we want to do with the draft.
Yep.
Knowing that we have that hole, I'd love that we address that as early as we did as free agency. So
absolutely,
we'll find out on Wednesday when that happens.
We'll find out soon what these moves we make to clear that cap space are, because we're coming down to the wire now, and if we want to be involved in that first day of free agency at all, we're gonna have to make more moves than just cutting Mike Williams. So we'll see.
There is one more, Troy Fontenot. I mean, yes, he was a tackle, and I know everybody's tape on him. They're always talking about the Michigan game. It's one game.
Yep.
It's a couple plays.
Where they looked unprepared as a team. Like, I am taking away a lot of my judgments from that Michigan game because the entire coaching staff looked unprepared for that day.
Absolutely. And I mean, with Penix getting hurt at that game, maybe you saw that there was throws he was just missing. I mean, Romo Dunze was open that last play of the game, but that's not what we're discussing. Trayvon New, I think he played great all season.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was one of those guys that I think they do UW coach their offensive line well.
Yep. A lot of people are projecting him at guard, so people are already talking about moving him to the interior.
So if we want to stabilize our left side and maybe move some things around, or maybe he can do left or right guard and kind of move around and give us a little bit more flexibility, I'm down to see that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we already talked about a bunch of guys that are going to go in the first round.
Yep.
There's going to be guys that fall through the crack. Is that one of the guys that falls through the crack because he had a bad Michigan game? Then I'm sending that Michigan game to everybody so they can see it. So we can keep dropping.
Absolutely.
So I mean, in terms of offensive line, there's a lot that we could keep talking about. Just touching the base for some of those.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys, and like, I'm not going to deep dive into them, but if you want to grab a later day center, like, go watch some tape on Hunter Norzad. Go watch some tape on Dylan McMahon. Like, they've got guard center flexibility, and they're going to be available in the 4th, 5th round at least. So, like, there are developmental guys that we can go draft at center and still sign that vet, and it's okay. Like, we don't need them. I don't want to walk into the draft needing a day one starter. That just pigeonholes us too hard, and it's too risky. So, it's a deep offense. I don't know if I've ever seen this much starting caliber offensive line talent. It's wild.
It is crazy. So, as we finish the offensive lineman, I know you just named a couple, but if you had to pick one guy that we're going to tell people to watch for our team, who is that guy for you?
I mean, I'll do a first half of the draft, or like a top end guy and then a lower end guy.
Perfect.
At center, Zach Frazier. I just think there's a chance he falls to 37, and I want him there if he does. He's elite, and getting injured towards the second half of the year made everybody shine a light on JPJ. I think it really could make him fall. If he's there at 37, it's a no-brainer for me. Later round, Hunter Norzad's a popular name. I like Dylan McMahon, NC State, and I like him because he kept moving because people kept getting hurt. And I love seeing a guy who was like, no, I'll step up. So he started a right guard, moved to left guard, moved to center, 3-year starter because of all of this flexibility, and just like didn't really miss a beat. He's not going to grade out there as a top end guy, but I love that flexibility. It really impresses me.
I love that you went top and bottom. I mean, we talked about J.C. Latham. I think he is a beast. But I'm going to take 2 bottom guys. I'm going to take Tanner Bartonoli from Wisconsin.
Tortellini.
There you go. I can't say
Bortolini, but we like Tortellini.
I don't speak Spanish. But in terms of like what he has to offer, like they always like running the ball, and I know we want someone that can grind out. He did test really well at the Combine, the Underwear Olympics. But I love to have a guy that has been on the offensive line like that and play center and a run-heavy offense that Wisconsin always has.
Always.
Be behind a veteran and learn and then build up and like maybe be that all-pro that we do need at center.
That's a good call.
He's definitely like he's definitely a day 3 guy, so somebody we catch a little bit later. Keep watching the Tortellini. I'm going to call him that now. Sorry, bro, that you got a new nickname. So I'm going to stick with that one as well. And then we always got we got the Michigan tie. I got to throw that in there. But we got a Zach Zinner.
Zach Zinner, man.
Like I said, I think Jim Harbaugh likes his guys. It's a coached up guy. He already knows his coach. He already knows his defense coordinator. So make a guy feel at home. He's definitely a day 3 guy. And we're going to stick in that day 3 round because I'd love to keep building picks in that day 3, which we might get for like a Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, in addition to what we're going to be doing to get the salary cap under. But those are some guys that you should be watching. But the Tortellini is going to be the one that's going to surprise you. So, sorry, man.
But and one thing to think about with Zach Zinner is like he is a 2-year, I think it was 2-year, it might have been a 3-year captain.
Yep.
So like that's something when I'm looking at Michigan guys, I'm thinking about like, okay, intangibles matter a lot, I think, to Jim Harbaugh and what he's looking for. So when you look about like he has been a captain of this team consistently, I think that holds more weight than just like he was a good contributor at Michigan. Like the Michigan name is one thing. Jim Harbaugh's going to go out there and want the best talent out there. I don't think he's really going to lean into just wanting his Michigan guys, but intangibles like announcing him as a captain for multiple years, I think matters.
Absolutely.
All right, let's get out of here on offensive line.
Let's go. We're done with those guys.
We're done.
Thanks.
We're gonna brush over tight end. Brock Bowers is a first rounder. No one else is. I don't think anyone else is close. I don't have any second round tight ends at all. Brock Bowers could be taken as early as 5 to us. I really like the fact that he might be an opportunity to trade back to a quarterback needy team, and he's still there. I mean, if Atlanta calls up and we go back to 8, if Chicago calls up, if they want to pull a Houston and double jump and try and get some elite offensive talent in conjunction with their quarterback, whatever they're looking to do, and we get down to 9, I think that's a real opportunity to get Bowers. And then the Vikings trade, which is really popular, if they really want JJ and they come up from 11, I don't know if he gets past the Jets. I know the Jets are desperate for a tackle, so I'm hoping they stick with that. There's a chance that Bowers, because of positional value, falls down to 11, and I'm sprinting to the podium. There's no way he falls farther than that. I mean, you get start getting into Denver and the Raiders and everybody else, they're going to take him if he's there. It's just too elite of a talent. But, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he falls to like 10, 11, Kansas City or Cincinnati trading up. Like, they have such a huge hole at tight end, and that would make that team so elite. I would not be surprised if Bowers starts to fall at all, Cincinnati trading up. But I loved Kyle Pitts. Brock Bowers is a complete tight end and a better prospect with every single year of consistent production. He's a 2-time national champion. He put up ridiculous numbers as a true freshman at 19. There's Brock Bowers. There's no one else.
That's it. I mean, Brock Bowers is an absolute beast. You see his production from 19 to what he did, even winning the 2 national championships. He always had games where he was producing in these games, whether it was blocking or catching the ball. There's a couple times you saw him catching the ball, and you're like, I can't believe he didn't go out in the draft. And he's
and those hands are ridiculous.
So good. And he's explosive in his routes. You see him lining up in the slot in some of those games. So that's why you don't see as much production from some of the receivers, because he was a receiver as well as a tight end.
Absolutely.
Blocks really well.
He's very much in that Travis Kelce role. I think he's a better blocker than Travis Kelce. Maybe not this stage of Kelce's career, but way better than Kelce coming out of Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, he's not George Kittle at blocking. Like, he is not that top tier guy. He's just really solid at blocking. So when you're getting an elite weapon at tight end who is functional in blocking, that's something huge. Like, Kyle Pitts was not a functional blocker. He was just a huge wide receiver that could line up at tight end. So, and now all they have him doing is blocking. So that makes sense. Good job, Arthur Smith.
I mean, as we see a guy who lives and dies by Kyle Pitts right now, I understand where you're coming from for that.
I love Kyle Pitts.
Love Kyle Pitts. I think Brock Bowers is definitely that guy. I like when we talk about our pick at 5. Does it sound great? Absolutely.
Yeah.
We don't have a tight end. Letting Everett go. Donald Parham has not just been the guy for us. We already let Trey McKitty go. Rest in peace. Sorry. But we have some holes. We have holes at receiver that we need to fill. That we're going to need to fill. QJ, please step up, because we're going to need you this year. I think we got to get those starting reps, but why not give Justin Herbert his safety net? Because we lost Austin Eckler. He was a safety net for him those last 2 years. I mean, last year was a little bit more injury prone for that, but we got a little bit of a hole that could like elevate us. I mean, looking at what other teams are doing, looking at what the Broncos just did. I mean, they're getting rid of Russell Wilson. Raiders still don't have a quarterback, and we got to play Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes twice a year. So do we want our own stack for that? I think that's what that looks like for us when we look at that number 5 pick, even trading down. I do think that they take the Jets will take that overwhelming need at right tackle. I do see him dropping down if he's not taken by us at 5. Or maybe you see the Tennessee Titans pull a trigger that they don't need to be pulling, just to give Will Levis a safety net.
Yep.
Because he doesn't have a receiver either. It depends on what receivers there or not there.
And we'll see. They've got a lot of money. Like, I think they're going to address wide receiver somewhat in free agency. Like, Hollywood Brown with Will Levis's arm feels like a match made in heaven. I would be on it. Like, I would put money on that right now. Yeah. But they also just have such a huge need at tackle. And so, like, that's your top 2 guys are going to go there. Yeah. And so if they went Brock Bowers at 7, I would be genuinely surprised if they're that willing to bypass the tackle position.
But what we don't know is what we don't know.
Exactly.
If he's number 1 on their board and they see him at number 1, and Fashanu or Joe Alt is number 2 or 3, like, that's just what they got to do. If they pull that trigger, they pull that trigger.
Yep.
I think Will Levis does need a safety net. We already showed that he's already getting hurt last year. He got battered at Kentucky. I mean, it is what it is.
Yep.
Do you need to give him some help so that you don't have him holding the ball as often?
Exactly.
Because Marquise Brown is only going to be beneficial if he has that extra 3 or 4 seconds.
Exactly. And so that's the question is, like, what's more important to the safety of Will Levis, getting somebody in there to protect him or somebody who's going to be open quickly?
Right. I'm with you.
You need a safety net, and it's got to be one of those 2 positions.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Real quick, we're going to glance over some guys. I am the biggest Ben Sinnott fanboy out there that there is. I love him. I think
Number two right here.
I think his positional versatility and flexibility is wild. I think he's Kyle Juszczyk, but at 6'4", he can line up in line legitimately and be that extra offensive lineman. Like, if we drafted Brock Bowers and Ben Sinnott falls to the 4th, I would draft both of them and not blink an eye because the jumbo packages would be crazy.
No, then we don't need any other receivers.
Like the jumbo packages are crazy. But yeah, I just think his flexibility is absolutely crazy. He lines up a lot at fullback, and so I think that's where you can just, like, no matter what he's going to get on the field as that mid-round pick guy. I don't like him at 69. I think it's too high. So I think he's got to be, if we get an extra third-round pick at the bottom or realistically into the 4th round. I know there's some hype around guys like Jatavian Sanders and Theo Johnson. They're not on my board. Theo Johnson to me is Donald Parham, and we already have a Donald Parham. We don't need a second. No. Jatavian Sanders, I just think, is kind of a one-trick pony with ridiculous weapons. So, like, it's easy to get open when you've got A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy just breaking down the entire defense. And not only that, you had Jonathan Brooks. So, like, who's going to cover the tight end? So I don't see it.
No, Jatavian Sanders just, to me, looks like a Jonnu Smith light. Like,
yep.
If he's got enough people around him, you can throw the ball to him. He might catch it. He might not. But I don't think he's the blocker. I don't think he has the routes. I don't think he has the mental acuity to break down defenses and kind of just be the guy to be in the hole for you. And
he's not freakishly athletic either. So it's like I don't see what his special talent or special trait is that makes him stand out to me.
And he didn't even run faster than Ben Sinnott. So Ben Sinnott ran a 4.68. He had a 40-inch vert. Like, he's just a freak of an athlete. Plays fullback, catches touchdowns. I'm number 2 fanboy for Ben Sinnott, so come on down to Los Angeles, my guy.
Yep.
But like you said, Jatavian Sanders, that's just not that guy. We also like Theo Johnson. I think he's lined up well for a tight end. I'm hoping Ben Sinnott didn't jump up to tight end too. I know a lot of people are talking about him now, but if he stays in that 4th or 5th round, if he gets to the 4th round, I would love to trade back in if we do make our 4th round pick at a receiver. If we don't make that call in the first couple rounds,
absolutely
trade back in, give up our 5th, or maybe that's where we get the Bosa, Khalil Mack deals to kind of get some extra picks in the 4th round to kind of make some deals. But
yeah, I just think that the talent despair, like, because Brock Bowers is going to go right away, tight end needy teams are going to start taking them early. Like, I think don't get me wrong, I like a lot of these tight ends. I just don't like them as 2nd, 3rd round picks. Like, it just comes down to their value level. And so if a lot of these guys start flying off the board in the 2nd and 3rd round, like, I'm not gonna chase that down. Like, no. I'd rather go get purely a blocking tight end and just have that out there in free agency than I would try and take a gamble on a 4th round guy that's my tight end 7 on the board and count on him getting starting reps. Like, I don't want to go and pigeonhole like that. And realistically, outside of Brock Bowers, there's no super well-rounded guys on the free agent or in the draft.
No.
Like, it's just there's flexibility and there's interesting traits, but, like, Noah Fant is somewhere in between, but again, he's very raw and we've never actually seen him put it all together. It's just like counting on those traits. Gerald Everett, not a top end blocker, man. He's a pass catcher.
Noah Fant is Gerald Everett, just younger.
Yeah, exactly.
Super athletic. It's too big for your own good. You look like you can do something, but neither one of you guys can block, and you still can't catch footballs. Yep. You're getting paid for it.
Like, I'd rather just go get an Adam Troutman to just be like, that's my jumbo set tight end. Like,
come on down.
Hey,
Hunter Bryant. I know you. Hey, thank you, David Njoku. But if Hunter Bryant wants somewhere else to go, come on down, bro. I know you can catch football, so let's do it. I think for me, a later round guy that, like you're talking about, just strategically just blocking, AJ Barner.
Yep.
I think he's probably an undrafted guy, depending on the dynamic. If all these tight ends dropping in the 4th, 5th, 6th rounds, then you're looking at A.J. Barner later on. If he's Mr. Irrelevant for somebody, great.
Cool.
But he's definitely a blocker.
If he's a 6th round pick and you know, like, hey, this guy's going to get playing time. If I'm drafting somebody at the 6th round pick and I know for a fact they're getting playing time, that's a great 6th round pick.
Absolutely.
So, but But I mean, again, the guy can't catch. That's not what he's doing out there. So I don't want to. I'm not going to reach for an AJ Barner in the 4th because everybody else is flying off the board. That's what I'm trying to avoid.
Shout out to Devin Culp at a 4.47, but you can't catch. I'm sorry, man.
Can't catch.
I know. Look, you're going to be a professional athlete, but I don't see it. Thank you for your 4.47. I hope you shoot up someone else's board, but please don't come to LA.
Yep. One name I do want to touch on is Johnny Wilson, just because he is in the receivers group. He's a tight end at the NFL level.
Absolutely.
Like, Johnny Wilson is a tight end. He's an athlete with bricks for hands. So how do you want to use him? I don't know. I think
6'6", 231. Though he's got to bulk up a little bit. If he's got a blocker.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, he was solid in pass pro, but from a receiver standpoint, you're not really seeing that against defensive tackles and guys that you really want to see it against the NFL level. So he is an absolute wild card, just a name to keep your eye on, because we have no idea how teams are valuing Johnny Wilson. And if he wants to ball out at pro day and ball out in meetings, I just wouldn't be surprised if he's realistically like tight end 3 taken. Like, he could be that guy.
He could be an Isaiah Likely.
He could be an Isaiah Likely, absolutely.
Who ran fast then, but you're like, okay, he's not a guy. But then you see him take over when Mark Andrews went down, and you're like, I can definitely see something out of him, and I think that's the way a build for me looks like.
Yep.
And that's great. I love that. I love that late guy for you. That's your guy.
Yeah.
I'm not a UW jump on. I know I just grilled Devin Culp, but Jack Westover, I think, played great in the national championship. I think he was a great safety blanket for Michael Penix. I think he ran great routes, read defense as well.
Sucked. I really wanted him to be at the combine. Sucked.
I think for him not being at the combine drops him to one of those later rounds. So if we don't get like a Senate, or like we're looking at 5 or 6, and you're looking at Jack Westover, I think he very well could be the number 2 tight end when we're looking at this 5 years later.
I really like that he shouted that out. That's a really good call. Real quick before we move off tight ends, who is your closest comp in your mind to Brock Bowers?
That's tough.
It's hard not to say Kelsey because all the recency bias. Like, it makes sense. But
even with that being said, I'm taking Kelsey because it's different planet. Mark Andrews, different planet. George Kittle, the way he blocks, different planet for me. Based on how he ran, how he's built, and like his production, unfortunately, he didn't really pan out in the pros. I'm going to go with Hayden Hurst. When he got drafted by the Ravens. So, yeah, very productive in college. Touted first round. I mean, took him by the Ravens first round. Then took Mark Andrews in the 3rd. I think that's where he builds out for me. Yeah, he's a little bit taller, and he had that same production profile. Early breakout, drafted early, just couldn't put it together on the team where he needed to put it together, and then Mark Andrews just outshined him.
Exactly.
So that's where I would put a comp for him. That's also his floor.
Yes, and that's what I was going to say is, so my thought as far as floor, or at least kind of that middle ground, honestly, Hayden Hurst's floor makes a ton of sense. Middle ground, where I think he is safer to project that he's going to be, I think he's going to be better than this, but for me, it's Zach Ertz.
I can see that.
I think Zach Ertz, body type-wise, Zach Ertz is a little bit bigger, but it makes a ton of sense. Moderately good blocker, but like that's kind of how he earned his playing time, was as a blocker originally, and then showed off his hands, and very smart route running. As far as upside, the nice thing about Brock Bowers is like that he doesn't have a comp for his ceiling. Like, you're talking Tony Gonzalez. Like, you're talking about people that are just freakishly athletic, always open, and ridiculous yak.
Oh yeah.
So that's why you take Brock Bowers, is because he has all-timer upside.
And if you get him at 5, I mean, we do really well at drafting at 5.
We do really well at drafting at 5. For those,
Sale and LT.
I was gonna say, for those who don't know, 2 Hall of Famers the 2 times we picked at 5. So LT and Seau. LT and I really need to get a Seau on the wall. So
get one up there. But like I said, we do well at drafting 5. Like I said, our last couple that we had at 5 is our Hall of Famers for us. So if Brock Bowers is that guy at 5, which, like I said, we just touched on him and we can talk about him all day, because he is that freak of an athlete. I would have loved to see him compete at the combine, but it's smart of him not to, because he's a top 5 guy. Why go out there and get hurt and just be ready for the pros, be ready to get your playbook and start rolling.
Absolutely. And he did have that ankle at the end of the year, so like, nurse it.
Stay healthy.
Don't push yourself, and train to do things that you're like different. Like, people are training for the combine, and I want everybody to remember that too. When you look at these numbers, like, some people train more specifically for the combine, but a lot of those guys are out there like working with track coaches. Like, they are working on these combine numbers. And so when you're a top 5 pick or top 10 pick, honestly. I'd rather you continue to work with NFL position coaches and make sure you're getting there instead of working on your combine times. And that's why some of these guys like don't compete at the combine. Like Marvin Harrison Jr., he doesn't care. He's going to be the first receiver taken.
Neither do I.
Neither do I. I don't need to see how you run. So just something to keep in mind. Where do you want to jump? We're done with tight ends. That's enough.
I'm with you.
You want to go to backs?
Let's go running backs because I think we're going to spend all night on receivers.
Yeah, there's a lot to go on receivers. Number one running back.
You know, I want to disregard the number one running back right now. Let's just knock Blake Corum right off the bat. Can we just
I'm all on board. Let's get this out of the way. We are not Blake Corum guys.
No, I can't take Muscle Hamster 2.0.
He is, man. I watch him and he's Doug Martin. That's what I see. And like, I get that he's decently good at everything and he's good at scoring touchdowns. Do you know who's decently good at everything and good at scoring touchdowns? Austin Eckler. When it came down to it, we needed 2 yards on 3rd and 1s for the last 3 years, and he couldn't get them. I want a true put his head down, push through the offensive line, and get yards. I think Blake Corum could have a very fine NFL career. I don't want it on my team.
No, absolutely not.
Like, it's just not my fit.
So Jim Harbaugh, I know you love your guys, and I love your faith in every one of those guys, and you coached them up for as long as you did. Please don't bring him to the Los Angeles Chargers.
I don't need it.
No, not at all. I think he's great. I think he's gonna be good for another team. I think he's gonna be a great Swiss Army knife for someone else.
Absolutely.
Please go hang out with Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the 4th round.
Yeah, I think he's a committee back.
Yes.
I think he's a great fit in a committee back. And Tampa Bay is really interesting because I think he'd be fun next to Rachaad White.
Absolutely.
I think that makes a ton of sense. But like, if I want a bruiser, and Greg Roman wants a bruiser, and we want someone who's just a head down, get those yards guy. Everything else to me is icing on the cake. But we need that just push through the pile type of guy, and I just don't see Blake Corum being that guy. He's shifty, he's finesse, but he's just not. He's not lead back in the NFL to me. I don't see it.
No.
Let's talk about Trey Benson.
So we can segue into number ones, but I think our number ones just shifted and are a little bit different for our needs.
Absolutely.
I think my number one, and I think I'm probably just going to die on this horse now. Braylon Allen.
Yep.
His breakout, the fact that he graduated high school early, went to Wisconsin early, got the workload early, and Wisconsin running backs, unfortunately, Melvin Gordon, Jonathan Taylor, they know how to build running backs for the league.
They do. They absolutely do. They consistently have. And like, one thing that's really interesting is when you look at Wisconsin, their guys usually get so many carries.
Yep.
How many carries does Braylon Allen have? He's got like 290 something carries.
Yep.
Like, he's 20 years old, a Wisconsin back who produced massively and doesn't have that much wear and tear. And especially when you're comparing him to some of these other guys, you got a bunch of like 23, 24-year-old guys. Ray Davis is going to be 25. Ray Davis is the same age as Gabe Davis.
The same age.
And so you see these guys, because of the COVID year, really affecting their age and things like that. And so when you're specifically talking about running back, getting a younger guy, that is a huge, like, you could get through 2 contracts of Braylon Allen while he's still in his prime.
Before he turns 28.
Like, that's huge.
Yeah, so he's number one for me. I think it was smart for him not to run at the combine. I think that would have hurt his stock even more. So I think that was smart for him to go through the drills, be there, talk to coaches, and go through all that. I think he is that bruiser. I think he's built like a Brandon Jacobs, just a big kid.
Yep.
I would love to see.
And he was big at like 17.
I know. Grew up fast. I don't know what they're eating in Wisconsin, but send some to us, please. Or Blake Corum. But the way he's built, I think he ran well. I think his vision is there. I do think that he doesn't have the hands that we're looking for, but I also think that we can get another guy that's in those later rounds, and
that's something that
free agent that
Harbaugh and Roman have done too.
Yep.
Like, so that's not atypical for them. They're looking for a guy a running back.
Yep.
They're not looking for a all-purpose guy. And yeah, being able to catch things out of the backfield in a pinch is nice, but they do use third down backs effectively.
Yep. Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards.
Yep.
Just said the way they did in national championships. Like, if they needed a fast guy, Donovan Edwards had those 2 touchdowns in the national championship.
And there's a lot of like 6th, 7th round guys that I like as your third down backs. A lot of them are like 24 years old, but I don't need you to be a breakout 6th, 7th rounder. I need 4 years of you being an effective 3rd rounder at $900,000 a year. Like that's what I need. The guy who's behind Garendo in Louisville, I'm spacing on his name right now. He's 24, smaller guy, really, really nice hands. Does a great job out of the backfield, and he's good in pass pro. Kamani Vidal.
Jamar Jordan.
Jamar Jordan, yeah. Kamani Vidal is one people are talking about as like a 5th round pick. Love him as a 3rd down back. But either way, there are guys down there. So I'm not worried about if we get stuck just getting a pure runner as our primary back. Cool, I'm all for it.
Yep.
My RB1 is Braylon Allen's my 2, but Trey Benson's my 1. I just think he's got such a well-rounded game. I just think I was astonished at his 40 time.
4.39.
I think it absolutely just exploded him onto the scene. I think there was a chance he was anywhere. Like, they're so muddled this year that your top 6 backs could really go in any order.
Absolutely.
And so I think that really put Benson closer to that 5-6 range to I'm RB1.
Yeah.
I've been a fan of him for a while. I just think he's really well-rounded. He is really good in pass pro if we need to use him. He's got solid hands. He's got great burst. I like his vision. I just think that he's a good, well-rounded back. He's not a game wrecker. There's no game wreckers at running back in this draft. That's for 2025. But yeah, Jonathan Brooks is a guy I like. I don't love him. I think he's going to be good on a team. I think we need somebody, if we're drafting a running back at an earlier spot, we need them to contribute right away. And coming off the injury, I don't think he's going to.
Jonathan Brooks is going in the 2nd round, and that's just something we're just not going to take. I mean, unless we take somebody in free agency and we're willing to hold on to him for that. But tearing his ACL in November is just not going to help us this season. So, I mean, if we're drafting for the future, I think that's great. I'd love to take. If he's there late 4th and we trade up for something like that, and we haven't taken a running back at that point. But as you touched on your number 1, I think Trey Benson is just an absolute beast. I love what he did at Florida. I know he did transfer Oregon. Mm-hmm. So I didn't see that explosiveness at Oregon.
He just couldn't get in the field, man.
And there's where my alarming was for the difference between 1 and 2 for me.
That makes sense.
Because I hate these 1 year, 2 year wonders. It's like maybe he can do it, maybe he didn't. Mm-hmm. But he didn't take over the games after Jordan Travis had gone down. So you can see some of those losses. That one loss they did have, but I mean they didn't get into the NFL to the college football playoffs because they couldn't get that last. I mean they went undefeated anyway, but
they just couldn't get it done. And like, don't get me wrong, I love Bucky Irving. I'm a Ducks fan. I love Bucky Irving. I just don't see it. Like, I really think he has a really high bust factor. Yep. I think he's electric. I was surprised at how poorly he ran at the combine. I'm trying to kind of disregard that because he has so much quality NFL tape. But when I watch him, I don't see him working at the pros outside of being that electric guy. Like, if you had a stud number 1 running back already that was more of a bruiser, like
Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, Arizona next to James Conner, like that duo makes sense to me. He absolutely does not make a lick of sense in Greg Roman's offense to me, so I just think it's something that we're not going to touch. But it is really surprising to me, and that is, I guess, if there is a red flag about Trey Benson, it's why couldn't you beat out Bucky Irving?
Yep.
So
when we're looking at that as a whole, and it's just one of those things. Like I said, for me, I went through that transition in my head. It's like, who's 1, who's 2, who's 1, who's 2, who's 1, who's 2. I think if Jonathan Brooks hadn't torn his ACL, this would absolutely be a different conversation.
Yeah.
I think Andrick Estime is nowhere near top 10. Thank you so much for running that 40. I appreciate you because you took it.
Just jump
off
up
the board, but
jump up for somebody else, man.
He scares the bejesus out of me. That we need that bruiser. I don't want him or Gus Edwards in my eyes, but that's just a different dynamic.
And I would take Gus Edwards over Estime. Like,
absolutely.
I just think that he's a goal line back. He is truly a goal line back. If he was really solid at pass pro, I honestly see it like his running style is a fullback to me. Like,
Lindell
it looks
White.
like like he is rolling a bowling ball down the field, and as hard as you roll it is the farthest he's gonna go. But like, the bowling ball's not gonna move. Like, it just kills me, man. And as like people talk about all this offensive line talent at Notre Dame, I watched Aldrich Estime tape, and that was like, oh yeah, John Walt is pretty good because these are 6 feet, 7 feet wide holes.
Oh yeah.
He doesn't miss the hole, but I didn't see a lick of creativity from him as a runner one time.
No.
So Estime is just not that guy for me. I'm not going to beat it into the ground anymore. I don't like him.
So I guess,
Yeah.
I mean, we can touch on the rest of the running backs, but I think we have guys we like, we don't like. So give me a guy that's in the later rounds that you are in love with, and give me one that you think is a bust or you just don't want to touch.
Yeah, so I mean, bust don't want to touch is Estime. We just touched on that. And we've already touched on Corum as well. Those two guys for me are they're off my board. If I was going to do a new one, it's going to be Ray Davis, and it's solely an age thing. It's going to be 25 at the start of the year. I like him as a runner, but he's going to be 25 at the start of the year, and I'm not going to invest that capital into a running back. As far as kind of a mid-later round guy, if Isaac Guerrero out of Louisville is still falling as far as people were talking about, I like him a lot. Once you get into those mid-rounds, he's the most complete back that I still see there. What bums me out is he looked like a freak at the combine, and I didn't hear a lot of people saying his name. So missing out on him there is if he ends up climbing up into the third round, that's not worth that price to me. But if he falls into that fourth, fifth round, I'm all over it.
Yeah.
What about you?
I really like Rasheen Ali from Marshall. Mm-hmm. He got hurt Senior Bowl before the Senior Bowl. I think he's explosive on tape. I think he's got the speed. He can catch the ball really well as well. So I'm a huge fan of him in the later rounds. Knowing that he is nursing that injury could get him to drop to like maybe a 5 or 6 range. When we're looking at maybe another running back to kind of complement. Maybe we do get our Braylon Allen, or we got or used our extra 7th round pick on the Marshall guy. Then I'm all for that. Bust for me, I think I'm gonna have to stick with Bucky Irving. I think the only team he can go for me. Yes, I think he was explosive. I do think that 4.55 or 4.6 4.61 he ran
something like that.
I think he runs a 4.55 realistically in pads.
Yeah,
I think
he's absolutely a football speed is not his track speed thing.
Right, and I'm with you on that. I watched this film watching Bo Nix and Troy Franklin, which we'll touch on later. I think Bucky Irving, unless he goes to, and I said it earlier when I was talking to Jonathan Taylor, I think he's Jonathan Taylor's complement.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense to me.
I think they need, with Anthony Richardson maybe running out of the pocket, or maybe like a little bit more improvisation. I think seeing somebody come out of the backfield that's not Jonathan Taylor to spell him, to keep him going, because you want to get another contract out of him as well. I think Bucky Irving would be great for the Indianapolis Colts if they were to take that gamble in the 4th round. But if he doesn't go to that team and they think that he's going to be a Devon A-Chain for somebody, he's not that guy.
No, he's not.
So
he's not.
I think that's a bust for me, because I think his capital for somebody is 3rd round. And if he's in the 5th, then that's a different opinion for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's time for receivers, man, and we got to touch on quarterbacks too. But it's time for receivers.
You want to do quarterbacks real quick?
What do you think? You want to leave them hanging for another episode? You want to go? Just let's take our time on receivers, and we'll just do another episode on these receivers and quarterbacks.
We can do a 45-minute conversation on receivers.
We're gonna make you wait. I appreciate you guys coming today. Because we're at 46 minutes now. I really thought we need 30 minutes on receivers.
Easy.
So
hit these quarterbacks and then dip out.
No, let's go quarterbacks, receivers for the next one. Because I got 30 minutes, 45 minutes on quarterbacks. We'll break it up nice.
You got it.
I appreciate you guys coming today. This is Stephen the Gover himself. I'm your host, Nature Erdman, and these were Nature's Calls. Thanks for coming.
Peace.